And I know you know who Jesus is. And Jesus makes all things well. And I don't care how much debt you're in. And I don't care if you're just broken up. I don't care if you've been through 3 divorces. I don't care if you have an addiction that you can't. I want to tell you right now that Jesus Christ will bring hope to your sown soul, and he will absolutely radically change you. Just don't quit. I wish I had time to share with you my heart and what God is doing in my life and my history here. Some of you don't know I was here for a long time, and this is my home, and I love you guys, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be back hanging out with you again. So thank you so much, and there's so much more there I could share, but I just got to get to this, okay? Because I want to encourage you, and this message for me will be, God willing, a global message. This is a message that everyone's going to need to hear. And I don't know where you are this morning. Some of you are doing great. Some of you have no issues. If you don't, I'd like to meet you afterwards and you can buy my lunch, okay? Some of you are great. And some of you are life is smooth and your marriage is great and your kids are perfect and they got straight A's and they never lie. And they clean the rooms every morning and they complain because the rooms aren't clean enough. And that's your life. And so if you're here, you can just leave now. For the rest of you, this might actually help you. And so this message is going to be extremely applicable, and it's going to be very raw. And in order to get you to understand how I feel about this message, I have to start with a story, okay? And I just got back from Winter Jam. On Friday night, we took about almost 50 people from the church, a lot of teenagers, to Winter Jam. Does anybody know what Winter Jam is? Let me just see. Okay, about 10 of you. No, I'm at 30 of you. Winter Jam is a concert of Christian groups, bands, singers. And so we took a bunch of people, and it was awesome. I went 2-3 years ago when I lived in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas, the arena set about 4,000 or 5,000 people, and they only had like 2,000 or 3,000 people there because it hasn't caught on out west yet. Neither has the Christian thing, but we're working on it. Man, the PNC Arena, it's like 19,500 people worshiping God. It was absolutely phenomenal. Anybody here go? Raise your hand. See, yeah, chainsaw, right? Chainsaw. All right, the rest of you will get that some other time. It's not important. And so we're there, and so I'm with my wife and my kids and about 50 people from our church, and man, the concert's going on, and we're having a blast. It's crowded. It's a great time, and God's being honored. And this lady comes up the walkway where we're seated, right? And she walks over to where our section is, and she stands like right beside, I'm sitting down, she comes down the steps, and she stands right beside me. Now, she's so close to me that I can, like, the hip, higher thigh, side area, it's touching my arm, right? And I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but I am not. But I wasn't sure if I knew her because I don't know all of you yet, right? I didn't want to be like, man, what are you doing? And be like, no, I'm one of the parents of one of the kids, and I didn't want to be like, so I just sat there, I was just like, I couldn't even get my drink. And so I'm thinking, what is this lady doing? And so I didn't really say anything, and then I waited to see if she interacted with any of her families or kids, and she didn't. And it dawned on me, she was just a random person. So then the rest of her friends came, and they're like all crowded right there in the walkway. And I know I'm at a Christian concert, right? And I'm a Christian, and I'm a pastor, but it bothered me. Right? I'm like, because I've been standing in the rain for an hour to get that seat, and now you're going to, she imposed on my area, right? So then she knocked my drink over. Yeah, look at you. All you, whoa. Like, it's almost like she punched me and he knocked your drink over. That's a whole new ball game now. So she knocks my drink over, and I was just like, I was like, it's a Christian smile, which means I didn't really mean it. I was like, I'll get it. And I was trying to size her up because I didn't want to confront her because I didn't know if she was taller than me. I didn't know if she's bigger than me, so I had to make sure. They want to confront her and then get whooped, and that'd be embarrassing. My kids were there. So I said, hi, ma'am. And she said, how are you? And I said, I'm doing great. I was doing better before you got here. But anyway, we have a bunch of kids here, and they're going in and out, and this is kind of, it could be dangerous because you're blocking the fire. I've never cared about a fire exit in my life, right? I'm like, fire exit, hazard. I got fireman friends. This is a hazard. And she just goes, and just shook her head and looked away, and I was like, now I'm mad. Right now I'm like, oh. And so I said, what am I going to do with this? Because she's still touching me, and I'm so uncomfortable. And so I thought, so I get up out of my seat, and I go out to now I'm like, I try to I walk outside to I get one of the attendants. I'm like, hi. She said, how can I help you? I said, listen, my name is Steve Curry, and I don't know where Steve is, but they want to meet you at the arena. They have some paperwork that you need to fill out. And I said, there's a lady in there, and she might be in the way, and she said, well, what's going on? She said, well, as long as everyone can see, we're okay. And I was like, no, that's not okay. So I go back in and I said, ma'am, can I ask you a question? She said, yes. I said, have you ever heard of a Jimmy Superfly snooker? Because I'm about to pull that off the corner ropes, off the top ropes, Jimmy Super. No, I didn't say that. I'm just joking. She said, well, I'll go take care of that. She goes in, I went and got a drink, all right? So I went in there, and she was gone. And I sat down, and my wife said, what happened? I was like, it's all good, baby. This is a Christian concert. Everything's okay. And my spirit actually got better after she left. God forgive me, right? And after it was all said and done, the concert was over, and we had a good time. I was driving home, and we had everybody in the van, and like 3 vans, and I just started dying laughing. I thought, of all things, at a Christian concert, that confrontation with a lady that was about half my size, all right? And I thought about, sometimes in life, there are these real funny paradoxes. There are just things that don't make sense. There are things that when you think about them, you're like, no, it doesn't really make any sense, like arguing at a Christian concert. It doesn't make sense. And when I was studying this week, I read Proverbs 13, verse 12, and it just struck me as not making sense to me. So I want to read it to you, and then I'm going to walk you through how I feel about this text. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read this verse to you, and then I'm going to give you a couple immediate observations that when I read it came to my heart, and that's going to take about 10 minutes. And then after I'm done with that, I'm going to give you, hopefully I can get to about 3 or 4 application points, and then I'm going to close with the story, and then somebody's going to go to Smithville Barbecue with me and tell me about their perfect life, all right? So Proverbs 13:12. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. I want you to look right up here for a second. Hope deferred. Hope not yet met with. Hope that you know and expect to happen that hasn't shown up makes your heart sick. But when the desire comes, there's a tree of life. And I struggle with this verse, and let me tell you why, and I'm going to walk you through this, because I know in this room that hope is applicable to everybody, and all of you need hope. And can I just say this to you? Some of you here this morning, if you don't think you need hope the most. It's the people who don't think they need help or God or Jesus. They are the ones that need it the most. They just don't know that. And if you're here this morning and you've been in church for 10, 20, 30 years, listen, your hope days aren't over. If anything, you ought to be hoping more than anybody in this life to touch this world. Listen, when you've given up on hope and when you've given up on big things, that is the moment you need to recheck your life with Christ. Sometimes we become too commonplace with the beautiful hope that Christ gives. So when I read this verse, I think about the writer of this verse, Solomon. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desire comes, it's a tree of life. And I want you to ask yourselves this question this morning. Where are you this morning? Are you the first part of the verse, or are you the second part of the verse? Just I want you to answer that in your hearts. Are you feeling the hope deferred this morning, or you feel that you are a tree of life? Maybe for you it's both. Maybe on Mondays, it's a tree of life, and on Tuesday, hope's deferred. You ever live that way where one day's great, right? Like you go to church on the weekend, and the music's great, and I work with the singers, so they're getting better, and you know that. I'm just kidding. That was beautiful, by the way. I don't really know her. It was a beautiful song. And And so Sunday goes great, and you leave Sunday and your heart is full and you're excited, and then Monday rolls around and you get a bill you didn't expect, or you and your wife argue over the toothpaste tube or something important. And all of a sudden you plummet off the cliff, and you're just like, I don't understand that. One day I'm good, one day I'm bad. One day hope feels there, and the next day it feels gone. And I don't know where you are this morning, but I want to walk you through this because this is absolutely critical for you to understand. My first problem with the verse is this. How do we as Christians find ourselves with a sick heart? And I had to work through that a little bit because the grace of Jesus Christ is very overwhelming and very exciting. And the life he gives us and the scripture and Christian friends and beautiful churches all over the globe and freedom in America to worship. How do we get to the point where our heart is sick? What's interesting about this verse is that the word defer means to delay. It means to prolong. Hope delayed, hope prolonged. But the literal Hebrew rendering of the word deferred is the word sown. Hope sown. When you sow hope, in other words, when you want it so badly, you throw it out on every level, in every conversation, you're fishing for, maybe this is where I'm going to find my hope, or maybe today's where I'm going to find my hope. And it literally means hope that is sown, that hasn't been reaped back yet. It's like having children, right? Pick up your room. You pick up your room. And you pick up your room. It's like, honey, are they ever going to pick up the rooms? I don't think they're ever going to pick up the rooms. And you sow that. You sow the hope that one day they're going to roll over and say, I'm going to pick up my room. Hasn't happened yet, by the way. Still working on that. You sow and you sow and you sow and you sow and you sow in your life, and you're faithful and you're committed, and you sow, and you're like, man, when is enough? Hope sown makes the heart sick. And the literal rendering of the word sick is the word despondent. It literally means this. Hope deferred makes the heart, listen, disconnected. I have 5 children. It's 5 too many. My little one, who's 4, his name is Luke. He's awesome. He's in the stage now to where when he doesn't get his way, he'll look at me. He'll be like, you know what? I don't think I like you anymore. How many kids ever did that, right? Can you get away? Kids ever? I don't think I like you anymore. I don't think I even love you. And so the first time he said it to me, my wife was with me. He goes, I don't think I like you anymore. And I said, I don't like you either. And my wife said, I'm pretty sure that's not the right method of parenting to, you know. I said, he threw it out, I'm going to fire back. I'm not playing this game with him. He cries and he lays on the floor and whines. I just, I'll see you on Monday. Honey, I'm not playing that game. And he said, I don't like you, and you're not my friend anymore. And you sow into their lives, and you want them to turn out to be everything they need to be and follow Jesus Christ, and they say, I don't like you anymore. And it makes your heart sick. And what it means is this. There's a disconnect. It's like when my father used to give me, I'll just say it, spankings. I got spankings when I grew up. Can I get a little bit of a witness on the spank? Yeah. All the parents. I really need to hurry. My father would give me spankings, and a lot of you have heard this. He said, son, I'm going to give you the spanking. I just want you to know beforehand what? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I don't know who taught you that, but that is definitely not true, right? If that's the case, let's turn this bad boy around. Let me spank you, all right? Because, because I've hit my brother, and it feels really good. Like, I think I like it way too much. So, just spank me and don't tell me that, because when you tell me that, not only am I hurting, but now I'm confused. So, but now as a parent, it's really true. And I don't like getting my kids in trouble. I just don't, but I know I have to. And there's this disconnect when you say this is going to hurt you more than, there's a disconnect. And the Bible says when there's a disconnect that the heart gets sick. And some of you are here this morning man, and your heart's so sick. Some of you can't see beyond today or tomorrow, and you've got so many issues in your life, and you have no clue what you're going to do about that. I want to let you know this. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he knows exactly where you are, and he is just waiting for you to say, you know what? My heart is sick, but I've sown hope, and I trust you, God, with my future. Because if you'll hold on, when desire comes, when what you desire comes, it is like a tree. Forget the words of life because that's a prepositional phrase. So in the original language, it reads this way. And when the desire comes, when it happens, you're like a tree. And I was reading that this week and I thought, well, that's not, on the surface, that's not very encouraging. Hey, you're going to sow hope and sow hope and you're going to sow hope and you're going to put it all out there. And then when it happens, you're going to feel like a tree. It's like, thanks God, I was looking for something a little bit more connected. And I'll get into that, why that's important. But before I do, I got to share a couple things that further bother me about the text that I learned this week. Number one, here's my first thought. I remembered who wrote the text. Solomon. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. And then I realized that Solomon wrote this. And then I look at Solomon's life. And I studied his life this week. Not that I needed to go back through that, but I wanted to just refresh my memory of how much stuff that Solomon had. I did one study, and I had to break it down. I'm not really good at math. So it took me up until about an hour ago to figure this out. In 1 year, and this was a yearly thing for him, but in 1 year, it talked about how many talents of gold that Solomon brought in. And when you do the math, in 1 year he brought in $1.165 billion of just gold. That includes silver or the other stuff. I tried to think of one and I couldn't. Or wheat, or barley, or meat, or cattle, or work, or taxes. He made more money off of taxes than he did anything. But just off of gold alone, he made a year over $1 billion. He had like 1,000 wives. I'm just going to keep going. Because it doesn't matter which way you take that, it's not going to go well. So let me just keep going. Amen and amen. My wife's homesick today. I love it. I don't know where the camera is, but I love you, sweetie. I'm just going to go on. So here's my dilemma. When I read this text and I read of all that Solomon had, here's my question. What right do you have to complain about your heart being sick? Can I get a witness on that, right? You make like billions of dollars a year. You have anything you want. You live in a palace. Everybody waits on you. You're the wisest man that ever lived. Yeah, like what are you complaining about? And that bothered me. So I went to my next deduction. If that is the case, then obviously what is true is number two. Obviously, when Solomon talks about his heart being sick, it wasn't in reference to things. Does that make sense? When Solomon writes that hope deferred makes the heart sick, my question is, how would he know that? If he has everything that a man could have and ever want, and all the wealth in the world, and your heart is still sick and you understand what that means, it must mean that it's on a different level. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a wealthy man, but I'm a rich man. I have a beautiful wife and 5 beautiful children, and Jesus Christ is my Savior. Absolutely. And I want to tell you this, do we need resources and more things? Absolutely. Do we find ourselves trying to get by and pay our debt off? I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying as I read this text, how does Solomon understand this? And the only deduction you can make off of that is it wasn't about money, it wasn't about relationships. It wasn't about things. It wasn't about where he lived. It wasn't about what he had. It wasn't about his talent. It wasn't about his potential. It had to be a deeper-seated heart issue. And can I just say this to you this morning? If you have an issue, it is really easy to blame it on the fact that you don't have enough money. And it is really easy to blame it on the fact that you don't have any friends. And it is really easy to blame it on the fact that I wasn't given a fair shot growing up. It's really easy to say it's this and it's that. But when you do that, you sow out kind of a victim mentality to say, you know what, it's all out there, and if life would have been differently, my life could have been differently for me, when the truth is, it really begins and ends in the heart. It's an issue of diligence in the heart. So Solomon's issue was a heart issue. So number one, Solomon's writing this. How would he understand a heart being sick? Number two, the context must mean something other than things. So if you're here this morning and you don't have lots of things and you're depressed because of that, I'm not talking to you. I know a lot of wealthy people that are sad. Some of you know I lived in Las Vegas for 8 or 9 years. And on the 3.5-mile strip there in Las Vegas, it's every month, $5 to $8 billion flows through that 3.5-mile strip. Just beyond the 3.5-mile strip, on the north end, just beyond the stratosphere, if you've ever been there, is abject poverty. 14,000 teenagers living on the streets. Just beyond the strip. Just beyond the palatial beauty of what all that represents, just beyond that are families and children living on the street. The tens of thousands. And you've heard the stories of people coming in town and they gamble all their money away and they can't get home. And I never believed that until one of my friends, who became my friend, walked that very story. It's not about money. It's not about things. It's not about cars. It's not about houses. It's about where is your heart in relationship to Jesus Christ. And Christian, I'm talking to you too. I'm talking to all of us who aren't quite striving, because here's what happens, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but let me do this, and then I'll finish the two context thoughts, and then I'll apply. You know what happens when you try something that doesn't work? And you're like, you know, I'm going to try again, right? And you try it again, it doesn't work again. Then you try it again. After a while, what do? I'm out. I've done that church thing. I'm out. Church is tough, isn't it? In church, you know, church people, and I'm a church people, so I can talk about church people. Sometimes you just wonder. We're quick to judge and say, no, that. I don't really know all of you, so there's probably Sally in here. I'm not talking about you, Sally. I love you, Sally, whoever you are. But that Sally or that so-and-so, and we're really quick to judge the bride by one person, or the picture of what Christ did for the bride by one person, and it's really difficult. And so I've heard people say to me, you know what, I don't go to church because they're hypocrites in church. You know what I say to people when they tell me that? You're right. Yes. And I'm one of the biggest ones, and I'm a pastor. So here's what and they say, oh, so you agree with me? I'm like, of course I agree with you. We're not all perfect. Well, that's why I don't go to church. Well, I understand that. Can I ask you a question? Yes, sir. Do you go to the grocery store? Am I right? And she's like, yeah, I go. Well, I'm pretty sure there's hypocrites there. I saw a lady the other day on the Weight Watchers aisle. I'm just going to move on, right? I'm just going to move on. We don't always follow what we say we're going to do. There's hypocrites everywhere. The grocery store. Hey, do you have hypocrites at work? You don't roll over in the bed Monday morning and say, hey, I'm not going to work today. Hey, I'm not coming in. There's too many hypocrites. Right? But for whatever reason, we expect the church to be perfect. We're not perfect. We're sick. Our hearts many times are heavy. We're working through this life thing, and it is difficult, but I want to let you know this. Don't give up, and don't you quit, and don't you minimize your dreams because what you've already tried hasn't worked yet. You keep pushing, and you keep driving, and you leave the rest to God, because if you stay faithful long enough, you'll see the tree, and I promise you that'll happen in your life. Let me move on. Number 3, just a thought. The hope deferred comment in the first part of the verse and the tree of life comment in the second part of the verse are absolutely connected and extremely intentionally put by the writer. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. If you get through that, you'll become a tree. Oh, they're so connected. I'm going to share that with you in just a second. And then lastly, just as a thought, not lastly as in I'm done. Lastly on this part. Man, I feel right at home. Thank you for loving me and allowing me to preach to you this morning. Number 4, just a quick thought. Some of you don't believe this. I'm going to share it with you. Some of you don't believe this. But I'm going to share it with you. And when I share it with you, some of you are like, well, if that's the case, then why? And then why? And then as I read this verse, my immediate observations, and the fourth one that came to my heart was this. This was yesterday. God's timing is always perfect. Doesn't always feel perfect, does it? I had my timing right. My wife and I had our 3 boys, and we were happy, and my third one, on his 1-year birthday, went through some very difficult times, and I'll share that with you as we close. And after we went through that really trying time, I was kind of done, and then my wife and I had a miscarriage, and I was on the road traveling when she miscarried. It was just tough. So I kind of deducted in my heart that we weren't going to, we're not going to have any kids. We're just done with that. And it was within about a month later, God brought a little girl into our life. And I was in a situation in my family that needed some help, and we stepped in to help and said, we'll help you. So we took her into our home and flew all the way here and flew all the way back to Las Vegas. And long story short, I'll share you the beautiful God story another time. She ended up with us, and she's our little girl now. And so we worked on the transition of getting her into our family. And of course, my wife was like, I think that was the only way we were going to get a girl is to help this family. So the day everything finalized with the courts, they called and said, hey, everything's good. She's yours. And I was so excited. And my wife got home that day, and she walked in and I said, hey, I'll never forget in Las Vegas. I was standing we had a little walkway, and she walked in and said, hey, they just called. Jaden's ours. My wife goes, and I was like, well, I thought you'd be a little bit more excited about it. I've been working on this about 1.5 years. She said, Matt, I'm pregnant. And I said, well, I can't tell you what I said. No. I said, you're what? She said, I'm pregnant. I said, you're pregnant? And she goes, you're not happy. No, I'm thrilled. Just stunned to the core. I can't, what do you, and then, I said, let me ask you a question. My wife said, what? And I said, how'd that happen? My wife said, if I got to walk you through that, we have bigger issues than having 5 children. And I was and so I literally, true story, and I love my kids. I love all of them. I don't know where they are right now. They're somewhere in the building, but I don't know. But I love my kids deeply, and we have built our life around our God and my marriage and then our children, and we love them. But I got to tell you, man, I got my car, and I went for a drive. Because when I was in college, I told all my friends, yeah, I'm not going to get married. And then I was writing another thinking, I just remember, 11 years ago, saying to my friend, I'm never going to get married. Now I'm going to have 5 children. And I drove for about a year. I came back home, we had a little boy. Listen, I wouldn't trade it for anything in this world now. God's timing is always perfect. His ways aren't our ways, His thoughts are not our thoughts. Listen, I think you just have to trust it. You just have to go with it. His timing is always perfect. If I can get to that story, I will. Let me take you through a couple points. So here's what we got to do. Here's how we have to close. What do you do in the meantime? Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire happens, it's like a tree of life. What do you do until the tree comes? Well, what do you do until that happens and it blooms and it bears fruit? What do you do in the meantime? Some of you know I've been on a revolutionary journey in my prayer life, and when we get some time in the later future, I'm going to walk you through that in a series on prayer. It's changed me, absolutely changed me. And I got up one morning to pray, and God just told me He said, don't add anybody to your list. I want you to meet somebody today. And a long story short, I met a guy, just a random event, and God brought him into my life, and I pray for him every morning. What do you do when you don't know what to do? You have to wait on God. What does that look like? Because I know some of you, when I said that, you're like, all right, I'm just going to hang out, not do anything. No. Wait on God. You can't wait on something that you don't know about. So for me, waiting on God was connecting with God. And getting close to God can be difficult if what you want from God, He is not giving you. When people hurt you, what do? You avoid them. You write them off. You sometimes grow bitter. And they could help you, but they don't help you. So you disconnect from them, and your heart grows sick. And when you think God is the source of all life, and when you think God is the very one that can heal what you're going through, and He doesn't, you find yourself many times running from the very thing that can help you. Church, prayer, Scripture, Christian friends. Sometimes we don't like hanging out with the Christian friends. Like, you just pray about that. It's like, if one more person tells me to pray about that, I'm going to punch them right in the face. God works all things together for good. Well, it doesn't feel like that right now. Well, and His ways aren't your ways. I know that. I'm very aware that His ways aren't. I get that. But right now, I don't feel like buying into that because I want it now. God, give me patience, right? Give it to me right now. We're wired that way. So what do? A couple of realizations I'm going to give you, and then we're going to pray after a couple more stories, 3 other texts, and 8 subpoints. Number 1, there's some application points, and there's so much more to this verse. Number 1, hope is at its greatest when pain is at its worst. I know some of you, I know this airs on Tuesday, and by the way, it just dawned on me that this airs on TV, and that lady probably lives locally. I just thought about that. What camera? I love you, ma'am. You can have my seat next year. And I know people listening here this morning in this church, and then those who will watch it later. I know for me to say that hope is at its greatest when pain is at its worst, some of you are like, well, walk me through that one. I had my first 2 children here. I'm not in the sanctuary, but in Raleigh. And I remember the day before we had Alex, we used to have pagers. Can I get a witness on a pager? Right? Yes, right. So call me on my beeper, I'll let you know. Beep, 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 beep. I'll get back with them. So I told him we had a code because Alex it was going to be really small. We knew that, and my wife had some complications, and she had put a code in my pager that if you see that code, you need to come. So I was out working in my office one day, and I went out back, and there were a couple guys playing basketball. And so I put my stuff down, took my beeper off, and played basketball for about 35 minutes. I get back to the car, and I had like 25 pages with that code in it. And I was like, oh, man. And so I got home, and she said, where have you been? I was like, I've been praying. I had prayed the whole way home. So we rushed to the hospital, and they're running tests, and they induced labor, and the following day we had Alex. He was 3.5 pounds. Some of you remember. And I remember when I had him. And I remember when I saw him for the first time, the thought just hit me. How could I love something so much that I'd never met before? And the beauty of that moment is indescribable. But the journey that we had to go through, the pain and the trauma and he was so small, but it was all worth it. It was at that greatest moment, the paradox of pain and hope rushed in and both appeared simultaneously. The pain and the hope and the life all were together. And I don't understand that, church. And I can't explain that to you, but I do know at the time of your greatest pain, that is when God is preparing you for the most possible and the most beautiful hope that you could ever imagine. The cross models that. Jesus Christ's greatest act, His greatest pain, His greatest sacrifice gave you the greatest hope you could ever possibly fathom. They come together. And some of you here this morning, you got deep pain and you're discouraged and some of you are depressed, and we don't like talking about depression in the Christian church. Shame on us. You realize that loneliness and the failure and depression are major cause of physical sickness. I read this week that being lonely and being separated from a group of people, a community, is 14% more likely to kill you before the age of 50. And is more dangerous than smoking your entire life. But that's what pain and despair do. They drive you away and alone. And I want to let you know this. When you feel the worst, when you feel the deepest pain, that is when God is about to provide for you the greatest hope. Listen, can I say this, and I got to hurry, and I got to move on. Maybe He's allowing you to keep going through that pain because He's trying to remove things out of your life that you trust in to get rid of the pain. And we hold on to stuff. We hold on to our money and our things and our stuff, and there's nothing wrong with all that stuff. But when you hold on to it, God might just say, you know what, I don't want you to trust in that, so I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. Well, God, I don't know, God, I don't have anything left. And God's like, you have the greatest thing left. You just didn't know it. Maybe God is making it hollow around you so that you can replant your feet in His hope. And when you have your greatest pain and your greatest loss, that is when God is about to do His greatest work in your life. I can prove that from you, but I don't have time. Number 2, we want the answers now, don't we? Before I had children, I used to ask some of you in this building, what's it like to have children? And you were like, you're just going to have them. I mean, there's no, you can't get ready for that. There's no, you can go to school, whatever, but you just have them. And then, before you have kids, you know how to raise kids. And then you have kids, and you realize you have no clue how to raise kids. And you want the answer now, and God doesn't give you the answer. Here's my second thought. Maybe the reason that God hasn't given you the answer is because giving you an answer is not His goal. Hear me out. This is important. Maybe God's not trying to give you an answer. Maybe God is trying to give you a future. It's important. He can give you an answer and it can resolve your current situation, or He can give you a future that will permanently put you on track to do the greatest work that He's ever called you to do. Jeremiah 29, you know the verse well. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans not to harm you, and plans to give you a hope and a what? A future. My plan is to give you a future, not an answer, a future. That's why in Psalm 1, the tree was planted by what? The rivers of water. The tree didn't run over the rivers of water and get something to drink. No, plant yourself by the rivers of water if you want a future. You have to stay here for nutrients and for growth and for connectedness. He's not trying to give you an answer. He's not trying to give you A, B, C, D. He's trying to give you a future and say, no, I just want to give you a quick answer. I'm building you around what I'm calling you to do. So for many of you, there's not going to be one answer. He's building you for a future. Number 3. I got one more after this, but I'm not going to get to it. Let me just give you this one. God's answer for you will always be for the benefit of somebody else. This is important. God's not going to give you an answer that just benefits you. God's not going to rescue. God's not going to make your heart non-sick so that you can feel better. God wants to make your heart non-sick so that you can feel better and help the world. His goal is to raise you up. His goal is to say, I have called you to touch this globe, and I will allow you to walk through this pain. But when the pain is over, you will understand what it means to be a tree. But not just a tree, but a tree of what? A tree of life. What does that mean? It's a life-giving tree, which means God will wire you to help other people, and God's answer for you and for your future many times is not for you, but it's so that you can find hope and realize that God has wired you to help other people. Tree of life. I find it interesting in Genesis. I won't take time to read all this, but in Genesis 1:29 it says this, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit you shall have for food. In other words, I'm giving you a tree. I'm going to put fruit on the tree, They won't put seed in the fruit that's on the tree. And then I'm going to water all of it. So when God gives you that fruit has seed in it, and it's for the nurture and nutrient and for the calling of other people to help them. Listen, when I get done today, we're going to go eat and hang out with the kids. I love doing this. This is what God's called me to do. This is my hope in my life, and I do it for Christ. And it's how God has wired me. And it is my goal that you will be encouraged and feed off of this, because when God calls you, He does it so that you can bear fruit for other people. And as we close, quickly, just listen quickly as I think about a tree, and I'll give you this in 3 minutes, and then I'll share a story, and then we'll go home. Number one, with a tree, it starts with a seed. In other words, it doesn't take much to get it going. Listen, all you need is just a little bit. The Bible says the faith of can move a mountain. I asked my wife a couple weeks ago, do you really think, like, if I had the faith of, I could really, like, you think I could move a mountain? She's like, man, I'm thinking pretty much that wasn't, like, literal. He was just, I was like, no, but do you think, like, would you be, like, neat? She goes, hopefully if you had that much faith, you would do something other than move a mountain. And be like, wow, what's that? Wasn't that great? Didn't help anybody, but it sure was cool. Just a little bit. Just a little seed. It's enough to change. Number two, every tree is unique in its origin and type. You don't go up to a tree and say, hey, this is a great tree. It's apples and oranges. It's awesome. No, it's unique. It's specific. And God has called you to a calling and to a gift. Find out what that is and run with that. Some of you have given up on that. God has one big dream for you, and He has one big calling for you. Find that and pursue that. It's unique. Number three, the deeper the root, the stronger the tree. Never stop growing. Number four, most trees are wild. And I love that. I wish I had an hour on this. Listen, we have so conditioned our people and our churches and our denominations and our globe, and we've put God in a box. We think we have, right? God's not in a box. Look at who He created, us. We're all different. Most of us, listen, be wild in who God created you. Believe in that and run with that. Then lastly, a tree must be nurtured. It's got to be watered. It's got to grow. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. But when the desire happens, it is a tree of life. It's no mistake that Solomon uses the term tree of life. And you find a tree of life where? In the beginning of the Bible? The garden. What's interesting when you read your Bible, the tree of life in Genesis is a capitalized, tree of life in Solomon is not. Why? Because this tree of life, although God gives me a calling and He puts His Spirit in me, I am fallen. So there's another tree in the New Testament. Jesus Christ would come and die on that tree to give my tree life, to give me hope, to give me fruit. About 3 months ago, my sons were playing football, and I have a 7-year-old that was playing, and I had him he was the center, right? And when you're the center on the Little League football team, that basically means that you can't do anything else. Just being honest. True for my son. After about 6 games, we got in the car, and Brendan said, Dad, I haven't run the ball. I haven't caught a pass. I haven't scored a touchdown. And I haven't gained a yard. Why am I on the team? So we're driving home, and I did the whole, fatherly, well, son, it takes many guys to make a team. And on the inside, I'm thinking, you need to play the guitar. He's really gifted at music. So the next weekend, lo and behold, they put him at wide receiver. I'm thinking, and the game starts, and he's the smallest guy in the league. The game starts, his number's like half his number's tucked in. What number's your kid? He's like, I don't know, I can't read the rest of it. So they put him at wide receiver. The first half, they threw the ball to him like 7 times. Not even close. Second half begins, they throw the ball to, bounced off his face mask. It's like, there's his body, there's his helmet. It bounces off. Well, the series is over, and he comes back to the sideline, and he's crying. My wife's like, go. I was like, what do you want me to say to him? Okay, play the guitar. So I go over there and I said, man, what's wrong? He's like, what's wrong? I can't catch anything. And then he goes, I can't even catch a cold. I'm like, hey, you heard that from somebody because I know you're 6. You've never heard of that before. That was good, though. I liked it. I said, Brendan, listen. And I said, the next ball you catch, the next ball they throw to you, you will catch. And in my mind, I'm thinking, why am I saying this? He said, what, really? And I was like, oh, God. Yes. Then you're going to, listen, when it comes to you, don't do like your brothers teach you like that. Just grab it. Like when it comes, just hug it like a teddy bear. You know, hug me. And he grabbed it. I was like, just squeeze it. Doesn't matter if you run it. Just catch it. He's like, you don't think it's going to happen? I'm like, I know it's going to happen. And I get back and my wife's, how'd it go? And I'm like, we got a big issue in our hands. So we go over next series. I'm not making this up. We tried to do the video for it. I'll show it to you another time. I get back to the sideline. They go out there on the 4th down. It's 4th and about 80. And they hike the ball, and he throws it to my son, and he throws it backwards, right? Because they're not really, and the other kid's 7, and he's about that big, and my kid's that big. So he throws it sideways, and my son has to turn around to catch it, and I can't see if he caught it or not. I wasn't even looking. I was like, Jesus. Hope deferred makes the heart sink. Man, so I look up, and I don't know if he catches it, but I turn around, and he caught it, and he's got the ball. And I'm like, Jesus, thank you. I didn't care what happened after that, Robin. I just catch the ball. I'm like, just don't die now, all right? You're the smallest guy in the field. He caught the ball, and he turns around, and the ball was so high that the other guys on the team, all 9, there's 8 players, all 8 players, big guys on the red team. They're the number 1 team. They're all running in at the same time, so he takes off running. His legs are about that big around. I'm thinking, he's going to get crushed. He's absolutely going to get crushed. And then he's going to say, I want to play the guitar. He takes off running, and they're all coming for him, and he doesn't know what to do, so he just cuts right up into the heart of them. When he does, they all fall down, and one trips, the other one, and he goes right through them and runs for 25 yards for a touchdown. And everybody's cheering, and I'm going, I can't believe it. I just can't believe he scored a touchdown. My wife's like, cheer, for God's sake, please cheer for your son. Like, yeah, I can't believe he scored. I can't believe he caught it. He comes over. It revolutionized his life. It was so sweet. It's so funny, too. And I thought about this week. Let me share something with you, and then we'll pray. When he was 1, they found a mass on his brain. If you ever walk through that, that's a horrible thing. I came off the road, and him and I hung out. We played blocks, and I really spent a lot of time with him because we didn't know what was going on. They were prepping him for surgery, and the very first day, getting all that ready, and he had real curly hair, and all I could think about was, man, you got to go through all that, and they waited, and we worked through for 6 months. We went and saw a doctor about 4 weeks in, and this lady, and she was so unkind. She was so unkind. And she was just very flippant about it, and she looked at his x-rays. She said, man, you know what, I think what he has is something vacuous. And I said, well, what does that mean? She said, that means that the back half of his brain is not even there. What does that mean? She said, he'll never walk. He'll never talk. He'll never have a normal functioning life. And I got to tell you, hope deferred. Well, it makes the heart sick. I mean, we prayed for him, and I gave him to God. I went in there one night, and I just said, God, he's yours. I even tried to rationalize it and say, God, if you take him early, then he'll be in heaven and won't have to go through the stuff of this world. You know how it is. We try to, make it work. We went through all that, and God healed him. We got a good report, and I think about him running for a touchdown. So funny when they were trying the helmets on during the regular season, the coach said, he's got a big noggin. I was like, he's got a big brain in there. He's fine. And I don't know what you're going through this morning. And I know a lot of you don't know who I am, and that's okay. But I know who Jesus is. And I know you know who Jesus is. And Jesus makes all things well. And I don't care how much debt you're in. And I don't care if you're just broken up. I don't care if you've been through 3 divorces. I don't care if you have an addiction that you can't. I want to tell you right now that Jesus Christ will bring hope to your sown soul, and he will absolutely radically change you. Just don't quit. Stay the course and watch what he does in your life. Father, thank you for these moments. And God, there's a lot more to say, but it's not really about us or me or a sermon. It's about the hope that you give in our hearts. And God, I pray that you would encourage those whose hearts are sick and despondent and disconnected. They've sown and they've tried and they've labored and they've worked, and it just seems dead, like nothing's happening. God, encourage them today to realize that you are building in them not an answer, but a future. Our heads bowed, our eyes are closed, and we're not going to stay too long here, but the instruments are going to play, and I want you just to do me a favor. If you just stand up all over the building, when you get done standing, would you just look up here at me? Just go ahead and stand up all over the building. And when you get done standing, just look right up here at me. I don't know where any of you are. I don't know most of you. If you've never given your heart to Jesus Christ, that's where the seed is planted. That's where things begin. And I don't know where you are in your life and what you're going through, but I want us to encourage you to say this. Sometimes the deeper the valley, the greater the mountaintop. Sometimes the deeper the pain, the greater the hope. And I want you to understand that and not give up and quit and just give this back to God and watch what he does with, oh, but Matt, you don't understand. Here's what a lot of you are saying, I caused it. Well, what didn't you cause? Well, let's just be honest about it. We're all fallen through Adam. We caused all this. So if we're going to say, well, somebody else's fault. No. If you caused it, do you think God's grace can't cover that? You think God's like, oh, you were really the instigator, so you're out. No, if anything, grace sticks more strongly to that than it does anything. When you realize what you've done and you've messed it up, that's when God's like, I'm here to fix it for you, to make it right. So I'm going to pray. When I'm done praying, Sean's going to sing. If you want to come pray, you can. If you want to just sit down and pray, you can. I don't know what you want to do this morning, but just spend some time just opening up your soul to Christ. Father, we give you this holy moment, and I ask you to do your bidding, not just right now, but as we move forward.